Antonio saying at least 5 people were hurt in a shooting at a flea market on Sunday. Gunfire erupting late Sunday morning at the Mission Open Air Market during an apparent argument. All the wounded involved in the shooting and no innocent bystanders were hit. 2 weapons were found at the scene. Civil unrest continuing in Chicago. Protests turning violent over the weekend. Protester Jasmine Martin on Sunday.
The police showed up in riot gear. The police showed up with shields, batons, and pepper spray, and circled us and kettled us in last night. Last night, they surrounded us while we tried to leave the premises, while we tried to protest and exercise our First Amendment right. They agitated us. They banged on poles. They screamed obscenities at us.
At least 17 officers were killed and 24 people were arrested during those demonstrations. NHL playoffs Sunday, overtime wins for the Islanders over Washington and for Dallas over Calgary. Chicago beats Vegas, Philadelphia edging Montreal. America's listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Dos opened its doors in 2010 and has been proudly serving the people of Guam for 10 amazing years. In celebration of their 10th anniversary, Mezcla Dos will be offering 20% off on all burgers for a limited time only. Terms and conditions apply. Please call them at 646-6295 for more information, or visit them at their Upper Tumon location right across Kmart. Thank you, Guam, for making Mezcla Dos one of your favorite hamburger spots.
The COVID-19 pandemic leading to an escape from New York.
Start spreading the news. They're leaving today. They don't want to be a part of it. New York, New York. A new report from Douglas Elliman Miller Samuel says that New York City is facing record apartment vacancies. It's leading to lower rents across several boroughs after residents fled the city during the pandemic. One thing that landlords are doing to lure new tenants is to offer free months on a lease, usually at the end of a full 12 months, which leads to a reduced overall rent. But it's still uncertain how many will return. New York has managed to flatten the pandemic curve, but a shift back to the city may depend more on telecommuting than any incentive that the city or landlords can offer. Sal Giangrasso, Fox News.
Lightning from a rare summer thunderstorm sparking several small fires in Northern California early Sunday. Those stoking a big forest fire that's forced hundreds of people from their homes north of Los Angeles. A Defense Department task force now being put together to investigate military UFO sightings.
The Pentagon is now so interested in those cockpit videos in which military pilots are pursuing something they can't identify, they're now forming a high-level task force. Instead of like those sci-fi movies where the government tries to keep UFO discoveries under wraps, both the Pentagon and members of Congress have been discussing those things openly. While they're doubtful those flying devices are from another world, some brass express hope they could be. Alien UFOs, they say, would be better news than earthbound adversaries coming up with a new technology. Eben Brown, Fox News.
It's being billed as the first Mediterranean cruise after Italy's coronavirus pandemic shutdown. Passengers boarding the MSC Grandiosa on Sunday had their temperatures checked and took COVID-19 tests before departing from the port of Genoa Sunday night for a 7-night cruise. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
Chili's introduces the new crispy ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your crispy ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with 1 of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's crispy ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3, Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So here we are starting out a new week, the very best time of our Tall Tailors' lives, because we're at the very beginning of a whole new week of Tall Tales. So we got just a little bit, just a tad less than 5 whole episodes of Tall Tales ahead of us. It doesn't get any better than that. So starting out this very fruitful week with Zemi Ikotny. So, as you know, Zemi Ikotny is that part of the program where I criticize the editorials of our 2 daily newspapers. The Daily News is very easy to criticize because they never run local editorials. They run boilerplate from USA Today, and it's 99% critical of Donald Trump. You might think, if I read parts of the Daily News editorial, you might think, why is Bob reading Democrat Party material as part of Zemi Ikotny? Because there isn't much of a difference. Today is no different. Today, the editorial is called Today, the USA Today, instead of running funny stuff in the comic section, is running it in their editorial section. This is Our View, written by commentary editor Jill Lawrence on behalf of the USA Today editorial board. So this is not some tentacle who slaves away at a desk somewhere in the bowels of the editorial room of USA Today. This is one of the high muckety mucks in the editorial lash-up. And she says, Harris signals return to values and competence. Joe Biden's choice of Kamala Harris as his running mate sends a profound signal about our national values and identity. I go along with that so far. It sure does. Not just to Americans, but to the world. Now, here we go. Appalled by what has become of the once shining city on a hill during Donald Trump's tragic presidency. And then they go on to say, Harris is much like Biden. I go along with that too. But it's amazing. Harris sends a profound signal about our national values and identity. If she is the avatar of our national values, then it tells the rest of the world that we are an extremely opportunistic nation that really has no principles, but has a chameleon-like ability to change its political complexion to match what it thinks to be the bare majority of the electorate. There are a couple of other words I could use here, but if you study Kamala Harris's career, you would agree with me 100%. Kamala Harris has no principles, whatsoever except to say what will get her where she needs to go today. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe next year, but today. Classic editorial offering from the Guam Daily News. Then we go to the Post, and the Post has been really consistent here, taking an extremely conservative view on the whole Wuhan virus treatment by our government. When I say conservative, I don't mean conservative as opposed to liberal. I mean conservative meaning let's really play it safe. And this is what the Post editorial says for today. Let's make the 14-day pause count and hold violators of Wuhan safety rules accountable. Now that we're in the first week of a 14-day PCOR 1, let's get serious about adhering to Wuhan virus safety rules. Wear a mask, practicing, all of this stuff. I suspect that little children, between 1 and 2 years old who are learning how to talk could probably repeat half of this stuff because they've heard it so often. It's not, can you say mama for the people? It's, can you say wear a mask for the people, Junior? And then they go on to say, we all know these are common sense actions, but we also know prior to the imposition of PCOR 1 that many of our residents have taken certain precautions for granted. Not everyone wore masks. Not everyone kept a distance of at least 6 feet when out and about. Who would this not everyone be? Could we say that when a person tests positive for the Wuhan virus and is taken sick by it, that's a pretty good indication that they have not complied with the various safety requirements? What do you think, Jose? Is that a reasonable assumption?
It's pretty dead on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I haven't known anyone on the island who was stricken with Wuhan virus. Unfortunately, I had a cousin back in Wisconsin, 76 years old. He died last week, Wuhan virus.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so that's really kind of came home, when it's more than just a statistic in the newspaper. But as far as Guam is concerned, I only know of 2 people who tested positive and are stricken by the disease. How many do you know, Jose?
I know of 2 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's compare notes. Can you give me a name of one of the people that you know?
They share the same name. One of them has an LT in front of it.
Ah, and their last name is Governor, huh?
Governor.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Familia and Gobierno, uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if this editorial is headed toward, as pointed towards Lou and Josh as an example of what happens when you don't keep your social distance, when you don't avoid crowds, when you don't wear your mask. We saw crowds gathered in clubs and stores and at funerals, and we are now all paying for a collective failure to stick to the rules. This 2-week PCOR pause on public activities provides us a chance to reset. We had relaxed in taking precautions at gatherings, and now Wuhan virus cases are on the rise. You think so. This is your best guess, but there's so little, there's so much that we don't know about how this virus operates that I think we're still working on kind of a by guess and by golly approach as opposed to anything that is the product of actual data collection and scientific reasoning. That's my 2 cents worth. School had just reopened physical classrooms, and nearly 9,000 Guam public schools were about to start face-to-face learning when the governor issued the order to restore restrictions. Rules have to be followed so we don't have to see a long, drawn-out PCOR 1. Many small business owners and private sector workers are concerned about their livelihoods. I'm going to change the wording there. All small business owners and private sector workers are concerned about their livelihoods. GovGuam needs to work towards programs that would give the small businesses and private sector workers financial security nets that will not leave them feeling there are two classes in our community, one fed by GovGuam payroll spending and the rest of the island whose bread and butter comes from the private sector. Well, that's exactly where we are. We have for sure, we have a two-class island. We've got those that work for the government, and you recall it's just I guess it was about a month ago, when almost everybody in the legislature was tripping over everybody else to give those people in the government of Guam who, horror of horrors, actually had to go to work, to pay them double, to compensate them, because most of the government employees got paid for staying home. So it's only fair if they got paid to stay home, then the ones who went to work should get paid double. At least we haven't heard any of that nonsense yet, although there are people getting paid to stay home right now. And then along the same lines, last week, Donald Trump came out with a plan where if states and territories would pay $300 per week, $100 per week in an unemployment plan, the national government will kick in $300. And when the governor was broached with that subject, oh no, we can't afford it. And the explanation was, well, why can't you use some of this CARES Act money that hasn't been spent? And the answer was, oh, that's already been earmarked for government programs. So it's a classic case of mind over matter. Governor doesn't mind, and people who don't work for the government of Guam just don't matter. Again, along the same lines, there was a story in the online about the the president of New Zealand reducing her own salary and the salary of all of her cabinet members by a substantial amount. And the idea that, average folks are suffering, we're going to not only empathize with you, we're going to show you that we really are all in this together. Northern Mariana's legislature is in the process of lowering their salaries, over some objection, of course. And the last time we had a fiscal crisis at the beginning of the 27th Guam legislature in 2003, Senator Lou Leon Guerrero was the majority leader. At the time, we went to a 32-hour work week across the board. So that meant that the average worker had his salary cut by 20%. The legislature reduced its salary from $55,307 down to $40,000 until the 32-hour work week ended and people went back to 40-hour work weeks. So it's been done before. Lou has seen it before. She knows how it's done, but she has been very consistent in saying, well, we aren't going to lower, we're not going to inconvenience our government workers, our hardworking frontline government workers. So I haven't even finished the first editorial, I haven't even finished the second editorial here in Zemi-Ikotni, and the most dangerous man in the room is on the line already. That would be R. Carl. I can just see him now sitting beside his super-powered computer with all kinds of apps and connections that would connect him to the capitals of the world and all sorts of spy networks, sitting there in his trench coat with his snap-brim hat, probably armed to the teeth. So what can you tell me, our Carl?
This isn't going to be too long. I just wanted to add one comment, because I've heard that before about, the Prime Minister of New Zealand and her cabinet or whoever, are going to take a 20% cut. And that's very nice and symbolic and everything. But when they basically locked down that island nation of over 5 million people, they brought to its knees one of their main industries, a $16.2 billion tourism industry. And they in effect, furloughed over 229,000 New Zealanders. So those New Zealanders, many of them, took a 100% pay cut. So if they really want to be, in the spirit of we're all in this together, they need to really match the 100% pay cut, which thousands upon thousands of local residents have had to take. If they're really genuine about that, and I don't think they're even up to the 20%, but it's just a thought, that it doesn't measure up to what thousands of local residents have had to sacrifice.
Good point, Carl.
All right, I'll let that be all for now, Bob. I'll just listen. That was my only point for the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good point. Symbolic, but nevertheless meaningful. I just took a peek here at Facebook while I was listening to the most dangerous man in the room. Andrew Camacho says the idea behind the lockdown is to, quote, flatten the curve and prevent hospitals from becoming overwhelmed. Our hospital has been overwhelmed since the 1970s. The Wuhan virus had nothing to do with it. Good point, Andrew. And then Pierre corrects my vocabulary and points out that the head of government in New Zealand is the Prime Minister, not the President. I kind of knew that. Actually, now I knew that before. It's the British system where Her Majesty is the head of state, and each prime minister is, as it were, the head of government.
He's going to call in and correct your accent, too, sir.
Probably, yes, quite so. Rather. All right, so let's move back on here to Dummy Cotney, if it's okay with our Carl. I guess it is. Okay. Overall, between March and August, Guam still has a low rate of positive tests at 1.8%. Governor Lulian Guerrero has said, well, it's true that our positive test rate over the life of this pandemic is 1.8%. The past week has shown alarming numbers. And she and Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio are among the COVID, as you were, Wuhan virus positive numbers, that's for sure. So, I heard somebody say, well, the rule is this. If Lou's got to stay home, everybody else has to stay home too. Yeah, called leading by example. And she and Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio are among the Wuhan virus positive numbers, though both said their symptoms have been moderate. The rate for people testing positive has nearly doubled to 3.2% in the past week. Well, I'm waiting to see how the figures come out for the tests they did on Saturday. They tested a lot of people on Saturday, and I'm waiting to see how that comes out. But I pointed out a couple days ago that in the beginning, we weren't testing that many people. Now we're testing a lot more people. So you'd figure that if you test more people, you're going to come up with more positives, especially if you have the rule at some of the clinics that you could only get a test if you're symptomatic. So if you limited the tests to only those who are symptomatic, you'd come up with some really high rates. But if you were able to test every single person on the island at one time, my suspicion, and it's nothing more than that, is that the rate is really low. Our greater concern is Guam's hospitalization rate. This is a quote from the governor for Wuhan virus. While our hospitalization rate remains stable at just 2 or 3 a couple of weeks ago, it stands at 11 today. Back to the editorial. It's not ideal for the economy to nearly shut down. Again, when businesses have barely had a chance to resume operations. The crucial thing for all of us is to make this 14-day pause count. Anyone who flouts the safety rules should be prosecuted. Yeah, prosecute them. Lock them up and throw the key away.
But not just anybody. Specifically.
Not just anybody.
2 people.
2 people. That's right. Yeah, they should be prosecuted. Well, I don't know. Good point, Jose. So the chamber last week said, let's be a little bit more precise with this. Instead of coming up, it's much easier to say, Corver, what is it? Core. I can't even remember the acronym we use.
P-Core?
P-Core, yeah. Instead of, okay, we're going to go from P-Core 2 to P-Core 1. Why not separate it out a little bit? You know, and say, and don't lump the churches into it just because it's easier to say it that way. And not every single business. Be a little bit more selective, but that doesn't seem to be the way that the governor wants to do it. Okay, so let's go from there to the card and see what we've got on the card. I have on the card I have, of course, Tina, who has now gone 43 days without detecting an emergency so serious as to cause her to call the legislature into session and to waive public hearing requirements for any bill that would come before that session. 43 whole days. I wonder if the governor has taken that into consideration. That means we're doing pretty good, I think. And, of course, I don't keep track of Janella anymore because Janella has gone to the Department of Public Health and Social Services. So this is what I've got on the card for today. I start out with Ed Ching versus Roque Alcantara. As I recall, Roque Alcantara was a third baseman, wasn't he, Jose?
That's inside baseball for me.
Yeah, as I recall, Roque Alcantara was a third baseman, and Dennis Sermeno used to refer to him as Roque Alcantara, the human vacuum cleaner. Nothing got past Roque Alcantara when he was out there at the hot corner. That's what they call third base. Jose.
Everything he caught.
Yeah. Nothing got past Roque Alcantara. So it's Ed Ching versus Roque Alcantara. The Attorney General of Guam versus Matt Murphy. We've got the Chamber versus the Governor. The GOP versus the Governor. Lee Weber versus the Governor. The Governor just never has a nice day, does she? I've got Frenchie, our Frenchie, versus Father Ron. Tall Tales versus Yale, and Brown versus Yale. And something I forgot to put on here. All right, let's take a short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 19 1959. And they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer staycation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,900 by calling Family Finance. Again, 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626 or in Dededo at 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, the number is 888-8255. 888-TALK is the number, and if you call that number, you will have the opportunity to hear your own voice broadcast to the international radio listening audience. You can also avail yourself of the posting feature on Facebook Live. Post your pithy comments there. I do not have a lisp. And more than likely, there's a good chance that I might read that comment into the record and comment on it myself. So somebody has already decided to call before I even got into the card. The first item on the card is Ed Ching versus Roki Alcantara. So I thought maybe my first call would be either Ed Ching or Roki Alcantara. Just goes to show you that even the host of Tall Tales, it can be wrong. It doesn't happen very often, but once in a while. So my first call is Matt Murphy, who is actually the second person on the card, but I expect that he has a lot to tell us. So good afternoon, Matt Murphy.
Oh, hello, Bob, and hello, Guam, and to all your great listeners out there. My goodness. You know, I'm going to let everybody know in Guam that I was tested 3 times negative for COVID-19, and I've heard there's a lot of bashers out there. They're talking to my family saying, hey, your brother's running around the island like a rabid dog with COVID-19, man. And there's nothing farther from the truth. So I'm going to lay out chronologically what happened and what I had gone through. And I'm the last person on the face of the earth that would want to go out if I had a fever, especially during the COVID-19.
COVID-19?
So, yeah. Well, they call it there's another word for it too, Bob, the novel COVID-19.
Well, the correct way to refer to it is Wuhan virus, Matt. That's the Tall Tales way to say it.
Yeah, well, I'm game on that, and it came from a lab. It didn't come from
It didn't come from a talk show with an international radio listening audience. But anyhow, go on, Matt.
Yeah, well, anyway, I just want to share with Guam that, you know, I'm a decent person, and now I'm being singled out that I'm a bad guy, and it's not good. I'm a businessman, and for the Attorney General to come out and not even say in the article that Matthew Murphy was negative, and he didn't go back to get his belongings because he was afraid he was going to get locked up, but he did go back 5 days later after he had his negative test and got his meds after his panic attack, and there was no nurses on duty that day, or I don't think there's any nurses on duty anywhere over there, so I had to call the ambulance. But anyway, the fact of the matter is my reputation is being so tarnished now with the lack of factual data that Levin Camacho or whoever's in charge of the Attorney General's office would be so one-sided. When I had came out of the hospital after the panic attack and took a cab to get back to my car. I scanned and sent my negative COVID test to Department of Public Health. The 3 or 4 contacts I had there that I had been emailing and everything fell on deaf ears. Sent also scanned and sent a copy to the police chief, and I spoke with the secretary. She said, Matthew, I have forwarded your negative COVID test to all the local precincts as per your request as well. And they still wanted to arrest me when I went back to get my laptop and stuff. So I covered all my bases, and I realized I never wanted any special treatment. However, I was an essential worker, and I just wanted to be tested, and I felt like I was being wronged, and I was just standing up for myself. That's all I was doing. And now I'm being thrown under the bus by the Attorney General, and a year in jail and $1,000 fine, and my court date's not for a whole other year, so now I have this hanging over my head, and I just don't like it. I feel uncomfortable. I'd like to go to the Attorney General and say, hey, come on, I'll show you this paper trail, all these emails and stuff, and say, why don't you just drop it? And why don't you just call it good? Why do you have to use me as some guinea pig, fence jumper?
If I could correct your reference to the appropriate animal, Matthew, I don't think they're using you as a guinea pig, more like a scapegoat.
Yeah. Yep, it could be. But, don't use me as an example when you don't even know the facts, especially the Attorney General's office. They have no idea what the paper trail that I have. The media probably does. But, just, you don't have to go out there and throw my name out there on a Saturday morning, and have my family call me. My God, what's happening, Matthew? Jesus, what have you done? And then I have to go into the litany of everything that transpired, which pretty much is on the record. But I don't know. I'm just upset. I'm upset. That's all.
Well, I can understand that being caught up in the criminal justice system is almost always upsetting. But from what I know, from what you told us here on Tall Tales, and from what I've read and my knowledge of the law, the reason that you're being prosecuted is not because you tested positive, but because you evaded quarantine. And that's kind of the law. If you are ordered into quarantine, you have to stay there until you're released from quarantine, even if you have the Surgeon General of the United States holding your hand and saying, I tested this guy myself and he's negative. Until you're released from quarantine, that's kind of the story.
Well, why didn't they have any nurses there that could help me when I had my anxiety attack and panic attack at 5:30 in the morning? And I called, they said, the nurses will be right back with you. We're going to get a hold of them. And that was the Guam Army National Guard. An hour and a half later, nothing. And then it turns out there was no nurses even on the job. And this is a quarantine? There's no nurses? We're supposed to be all sick, infected people, and there's no nurses there? There's no ventilators? There's no test kits? There's nothing on site. It's a total joke. So I disagree with you, Bob.
You disagree with me on the law?
No. Yeah, I do.
So you don't think that the law then criminalizes evading quarantine?
Because I'm innocent.
Excuse me, Matt. That the law criminalizes evading quarantine when you've been ordered to quarantine?
I did not evade quarantine. I took an ambulance out of there.
Matt, let's calm down here. Okay, the law, and I'm not talking about what you think.
Oh, okay, Bob.
I'm talking about...
You know what? Go ahead and be on the side of leaving Camacho, and I'll see you in court. I'm going to let you go.
Well, good luck. You won't see me in court, I can tell you that. Okay, so Back to Ed Ching versus Rocky Alcantara, and then we'll get to Matt Murphy on the next item on the card. The headline of this story is DPR shuts down Epau Beach ahead of executive order, reopens after Guam Swimming Federation President Ed Ching intervenes. And Governor Leon Guerrero held a news conference on Friday and informed the island that we were going into a pandemic condition of readiness 1 on Sunday. Now, here we go, 12 a.m. What time is 12 a.m., Jose?
Depends on what day you want to start it at.
Yeah.
12 a.m. is 12
a.m. on Sunday.
It's not 12 p.
No.
It's midnight.
Yeah, it would be midnight. It's much easier to say midnight than it is to say 12 a.m. But anyhow, at midnight on a 2-week island-wide lockdown. And then there's an explanation of what PCOR 1 is. And reportedly, against the governor's executive order, the Guam Department of Parks and Rec. Now, I don't think the Guam Department of Parks and Rec closed it down. I think the director of Parks and Rec, Rocky Alcantara, closed at least one beach on Saturday, only to reopen it later that morning after Guam Swimming Federation President Ed Ching intervened. Ching, along with the Manhoman Swim Club, had arrived at Epau Beach for one final practice before the lockdown. Quote, according to my source, a very reliable source, the director gave marching orders to shut down starting today. Ching said, all the cones are here and everything. But anyhow, apparently Ed Ching called out the director, and the beach was open and he could have his swimming practice after all. An unfortunate situation that perhaps underscores what happens when directors think that they are operating their own private property. Now, why would a director want to close that beach at 6 p.m., 1800 on Friday, when the executive order says starting at 12:01 on Sunday? So the beach could have been open on Saturday. Why would he do that? And, of course, the reason that he might have done that was he figured, well, I'll do it. People might not like it, but so what? He just didn't bank on Ed Ching coming along and saying, Ed Ching winds up by saying this. Today's Saturday, Ching said, the director, Rocky Alcantara, superseded the governor's orders. I'm following the governor's orders. Somebody make up their mind. Make up their mind. Well, at least he understands the vocabulary. Who's in charge around here? Is it the governor or the director of Parks and Recreation? And I think that up until Ching came along, we knew the answer to that question. Second item on the card, AG versus Matt Murphy. And it was a lot of coverage here. KOAM covered it, the Post covered it, and KOAM and the Post. A returning resident who pushed to be tested for Wuhan virus last month so he wouldn't have to stay quarantined in a local hotel is now facing a misdemeanor charge. Attorney General Levin Camacho filed a case against Matthew Frederick Murphy on Friday. The AG's office accused the defendant of violating quarantine orders after arriving on Guam from a high-risk area. The nature of the violation was not specified. Camacho said the court will review the complaint to decide if the misdemeanor charge is supported by probable cause. He noted that a violation of an order to quarantine or isolate, whether at home or at a government site, is a misdemeanor offense punishable by up to 1 year in prison and up to $1,000 fine. Murphy spoke to the Daily Post last month while at the Bayview Hotel in Tumum, where he was seen holding a sign from his hotel balcony that stated, quote, "Free us." The Tumuning resident at the time stated there were 2 nurses who were taking the quarantine travelers' temperature every morning and has asked, "Can't they give us the test?" The Attorney General noted that since July 24, 21 passengers tested positive for Wuhan virus in quarantine. Our office is prepared to take criminal action against those who violate quarantine orders when warnings and education efforts aren't enough. We will continue to work with the Department of Public Health and Social Services and the police department to educate the public about the measures we must take to and on and on. So that's what happened. So I went through this a couple of weeks ago, and the law is this, that the Director of Public Health has the ability to establish quarantine and order people to quarantine under certain conditions. I suppose one could quibble about the conditions, but the Director of Public Health, the Director of Public Health and Social Services, and the governor does have that authority. And there's a blanket penal provision that says that if you violate the quarantine regulations, you're guilty of a misdemeanor. So take the hypothetical case that I come in on an airplane and I had a test before I got on the airplane. I tested negative. I am ordered to quarantine on the 19th floor. You got to use a little imagination for this one, Jose. I think putting me on the 19th floor would be like exposing Superman to kryptonite. But so I'm there, and then a friend of mine who is a doctor comes in and sticks one of those things up my nose and takes it to the lab and comes back in 2 hours and said, "Bob, you tested negative." Okay. So I say, well, I was negative when I got here, and I'm negative now. I'm out of here. And I leave. I don't bust out. I just leave. And a police officer who happens to know that I had been ordered to quarantine sees me wandering around. I used kind of the same hypothetical the last time I talked about this. He is witnessing me committing a misdemeanor in his presence, because to be out and about in violation of quarantine orders is a misdemeanor. So under that circumstance, what could happen is he could arrest me. He could take me and book me and confine me until I could be brought before a magistrate. The magistrate then would set the conditions of release. The magistrate, and so I'm saying, well, look, I've got all of these negative test results, so all you have to do is just release me. And the magistrate would say, no doubt, I'm not going to get into who should be on quarantine and who shouldn't. You were brought here, you were arrested because you violated quarantine. Therefore, the conditions of your release are to go back into quarantine and stay there until you're properly released. So the violation, the misdemeanor, is not wandering around after you've tested negative. Not wandering around with no test or testing positive. The violation is not complying with the quarantine, and I suspect that's exactly what's going to happen with Mr. Murphy when his trial date arrives. That will be the issue. Did you violate the quarantine regulation? Not were you positive or were you negative or something like that. So I got a short break coming up, and after that short break, I'm going to chat with another Joe.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They are open in Agana, ready for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them 479-2652 and get your Mezcla fix today.
So here we are, back again, Tall Tales. I've got another Joe on the line. I noticed Andrew posed an interesting question. As the positive cases rise, can the government order us to stay inside our houses and not go out at all? And in theory, yes. Now, there is language in the quarantine statute that says that the quarantine must be the most restrictive means necessary, the least restrictive means necessary to accomplish the object of the quarantine. So I think probably if that were brought before a court, the court would say, nah, that's overbroad. But it's an interesting question. Interesting question, Andrew. Okay, let's find out what another Joe wants to tell us. Hello, another Joe.
I'm sorry. Was the question whether Matt Murphy could self-quarantine at home?
No, Andrew's question was, could the governor issue an order that we're all quarantined, that we're all confined to quarters? You can't leave your house.
Oh. So what is this Matt Murphy? Is he a resident of Guam?
Yeah.
Was there some reason why they couldn't let him self-quarantine at home?
He went into that when he called. I don't remember exactly what the details were, but I think it was one of those times when everybody who arrived who didn't have papers from somewhere else, maybe he came from California or Hawaii and didn't have papers showing that he tested negative. Maybe not, but it might have been. And all the people in that situation were quarantined. It seems to me he said that there were about a dozen of them, or maybe 20 of them, that were quarantined at that time.
So there was no process for which he could just go to his residence and continue quarantine there?
No, he was ordered into quarantine at the hotel.
Oh, okay. And so what is the soonest that Governor Lilian Guerrero would be able to pardon Matt Murphy?
She could pardon him. Even we found out in the Watergate case that a person can be pardoned even before charges are brought against him, in the case of Richard Nixon. Although up until then, conventional wisdom held that no conviction, no pardon. But if he were convicted, she could pardon him the next day.
So she could pardon him tomorrow?
She could.
Okay, just a thought, because if you think about it, this governor signed into law basically recreational adult marijuana. Now, last time I checked, from what I heard, that in some cases, whatever the prescription of whichever compound of cannabinoid, there's some possibility of paranoia. I don't know if that's the illegal compounds. But nevertheless, you've got quite a lot of marijuana now that people are going to legally grow in small amounts. What are you going to do when people start having paranoia and having such similar cases where they have panic attacks? Is she going to start incarcerating everyone, that they can prove that they're on prescription marijuana? It's something to think about. What do you think, Bob? Is that fair to bring up?
When we talk about criminal prosecution, it's a little bit more complicated than he did it, or they did it, or they didn't do it, because there are defenses. For instance, a person who is incapable of participating in his own defense cannot be prosecuted. Now, if the question is, if a person was committed the illegal, what kind of crime are we talking about here? Another Joe.
You're talking about evading the quarantine, was it?
Okay, so you're saying that a person had been using marijuana, was paranoid, and for that reason evaded the quarantine?
Well, he was saying he had a panic attack.
Yeah.
And they were able to prove it. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Wouldn't paranoia have similar symptoms? Elevated heart rate and...
one time I was a little paranoid. In fact, people tell me I should be more paranoid than I am because of the content of Tall Tales and the way that Tall Tales doesn't pull any punches. And my response has been, no, I don't think paranoia is appropriate. I'm just hoping that there aren't so many people out to get me.
Okay. All right, good one. good timing with the horn there.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there, Bob. Maybe the governor could think it over, because you're going to have quite a lot of people out there. I mean, it's going to be, a year or so at least. I mean, it doesn't take a stretch of the imagination that sometime between now and a year or two, someone's going to start having paranoia, and it's going to be somehow marijuana related, and the numbers start adding up. And then you're going to have a following of saying, hey, that's not right, because I'm a little bit paranoid and you're having a panic attack. I'm just saying, Uncle Bob. Anyway, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. And if anyone else has a similar train of thought, maybe they can weigh in.
Anybody else? Are you paranoid, another Joe?
Oh, my God. What was that song by Rockwell? Having to do with the IRS? I think Trump had a good reason to be paranoid, and because of that, he ran for presidency. Look what the Democrats have brought upon themselves, right? Because they kept auditing his taxes.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you get what you sow. What was the saying?
You reap what you sow. But going back to your hypothetical, substitute alcohol for marijuana. Is it a defense to committing a crime that you've been drinking a lot of alcohol and the alcohol affected your behavior?
There was this Law and Order case on TV where I guess for a minor, right? Good one. It might be defensible in the case of a minor, but I'm not so sure it's the same for an adult.
Yeah. Ordinarily, except in some rather odd situations, consumption of alcohol doesn't serve as an affirmative defense to a criminal prosecution. Good talking to you, another Joe. Let's break for that big halftime show, okay?
Okay, come on, thanks.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Officers shot. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. 3 police officers shot Sunday at a home in Cedar Park, Texas, outside Austin, setting up an ongoing hostage standoff.
His mother called police and said he was acting violently. Police asking anyone in the area to stay inside, saying the young man in his 20s had barricaded himself inside the home, taking 3 hostages, including his mother and someone under the age of 18. Hostage negotiators continuing to make contact with him. We're told the young man has been using social media.
Reporter Shannon Ryan with Fox TV affiliate KTBC in Austin. The Democratic National Convention starts Monday. Presumptive vice presidential nominee Senator Kamala Harris talking to the website The Grio on Sunday about the power of the black vote.
When we vote, we get the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act. When we vote, we have the ability to put in place an administration that is going to focus on closing the racial wealth gap, on addressing bias and racism in the system.
Senator Harris will speak at the convention Wednesday night. The U.S. Postal Service in the spotlight as the November election nears.
Millions of people are expected to send ballots in the mail. Fox News has confirmed the Inspector General of the Postal Service is investigating multiple allegations surrounding the organization. The man at the helm, Postmaster General, a man named Louis DeJoy, handpicked by the president. President Trump defended Mr. DeJoy, arguing that he is actually helping to streamline the agency.
Fox's David Spunt. The president has said that mail-in balloting could result in high levels of voter fraud. His critics say there's no evidence to support that claim. Over 4,500 buildings remain threatened by a big California wildfire burning toward thick, dry brush in the Angeles National Forest. America's listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Dos opened its doors in 2010 and has been proudly serving the people of Guam for 10 amazing years. In celebration of their 10th anniversary, Mezcla Dos will be offering 20% off on all burgers for a limited time only. Terms and conditions apply. Please call them at 646-6295 for more information, or visit them at their Upper Tumon location, right across Kmart. Thank you, Guam, for making Mezcla Dos one of your favorite hamburger spots.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb giving his assessment of the latest numbers surrounding the coronavirus pandemic.
There's been a fairly persistent level of infection, hospitalizations, and deaths over the last couple of weeks. We've had over 1,000 deaths a day for at least 2 weeks now, over 50,000 infections a day on average. We hit 55,000 in the last day. Hospitalizations have come down a little bit, but they haven't really started to decline very rapidly.
And on the pandemic's movement,
what's happening is as the cases start to decline in the southern states, Arizona, Texas, Florida, we're starting to see infections pick up in other parts of the country. California is still increasing. Really, the only state that seems to have come down quite a bit of the epidemic Sunbelt states is Arizona.
Dr. Gottlieb on CBS's Face the Nation. Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds asking the federal government for nearly $4 billion to recover from an unusual windstorm that hit the state last Monday, killing at least 3, leaving thousands without power and extensively damaging crops. The United Arab Emirates, now just the 3rd country in the Middle East to officially establish diplomatic ties with Israel. A new agreement brokered by the Trump White House, receiving praise around the world, and it'll put a pause on Israeli plans for the annexation of the West Bank. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This peace unites two of the most advanced economies in the world, Israel and the United Arab Emirates, and 2 of the most moderate. We're fighting Iran and the radicals who are trying to overthrow the entire order in the Middle East.
The Prime Minister on Fox's America's News headquarters. A Texas Army National Guard soldier has died during a training exercise at Fort Hood. 36-year-old Bradley Moore died Thursday during land navigation training. Foul play is not suspected, and the death remains under investigation. I'm Paul Stevens, and this is Fox News.
Chili's introduces the new Crispy Ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your Crispy Ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with one of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's Crispy Ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are back again after that big halftime show. That means we're in the second half of Tall Tales. I noticed a couple of interesting things on Facebook here during the halftime show. John Paris says, are the military guys that broke quarantine and positively spread Wuhan accountable? Not that 2 wrongs make a right, but sounds like favoritism. Well, John, I don't know that the military guys that were out wandering around were actually on quarantine. They were under their military orders to stay in the hotel, but I don't know that a public health official on Guam had ordered that each of them be in quarantine. So if they actually weren't in quarantine, then there's nothing that the civilian government can punish them for. If they were ordered to stay in that hotel and they violated orders, then I suspect that every one of them did get punished. Probably what used to be called in the Marine Corps office hours. The Navy calls it captain's mast. I think the Air Force calls it a slap on the wrist. Yeah, I'm not sure of the nomenclature there.
I forgot you were a Marine, sir.
There you go. So, anyhow, it's Article 15 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. A person can lose a stripe. He can be restricted for 30 days. Bad things can happen to him, and I suspect that that's probably what happened to him. But I don't think that they were quarantined under a civilian order, so there wouldn't be any way that they could be prosecuted for that. Okay, and then John Paris says, remember the Teddy Roosevelt cases spreading Hawaii did not want them, and Guam opened its arms, and we suffered consequences. That's not quite the way I remember it. The way I remember it, they sailed in here. They were operating in this part of the world. They sailed into Guam and didn't realize that they had a Wuhan virus problem until they got here. And then after they got here, they they rotated the sailors off the ship so they could clean it up, take care of the ones that were sick, isolate them, etc. But I don't think it worked out that they were sailing around in the Philippine Sea, and Captain Crozier said, "We've got a lot of Wuhan virus cases here. I'm going to see if we can pull into Pearl Harbor. Well, Pearl Harbor won't have us. Let's see if Guam." No, I don't think that's the way it worked at all. So my recollection is they didn't realize they had a problem until they'd actually pulled into port. Do you remember it that way, Jose?
I do know that they were here originally, went out to, I believe, Vietnam, and then came back. So it was part of the...
Yeah, it was part of the routine. Yeah. Okay, so next on the card is the Chamber of Commerce versus Governor Leon Guerrero. And the headline of this Post story is, "We simply cannot stop living." And I can't think of a better way of saying it. We cannot stop living. While we hoped there would be a change of heart in the governor's final decision, we are deeply dismayed that the governor has decided to place Guam in PCOR 1 again. There has been a daily sense of frustration and uncertainty among local businesses as all have gone above and beyond to ensure that their operations are in compliance with CDC and public health guidelines. The additional costs of keeping up with sanitation protocols, low sales revenue have meant the life and death of one company after another over the past several months. And I'll tell you, it's like I mentioned a little earlier, when it happens to someone that you know, all of a sudden it's not just a number on a piece of paper, it's real. So I got an email yesterday, the Travel Pacificana. It's been around here since the 70s. It was a really good business to do business. They're hanging it up. They sent out a notice, they're closing their doors. They're going to take care of people that are already ticketed, but they're gone. And they were, you know, they were what appeared to be quite a successful business, because the dynamics of the travel agency business changed, I think, around 20 years ago. It used to be the travel agents' revenue came from commissions that they earned from airlines for selling airline tickets. And then all of a sudden the airline said, "We're not going to do that anymore." So if you were to go to a travel agent, you had to actually pay the travel agent for his services. And of course, then the internet came along, and now if you don't have 10 thumbs and you can sit down at a computer, you can probably fumble through your own ticketing. But Travel Pacificana was able to survive both of those dramatic changes in business and continue on successfully. But they're gone now. They closed. And you can understand it. How can any business survive not only with having to close like this, but with the uncertainty? And then with the feeling, and maybe it's nothing more than that, but the feeling that the governor is really trigger happy. That given a marginal case, we've got to protect the people. Let's close everything down again. The very companies that have served our island for many years are in grave danger of closing their doors forever. And of course, we're seeing it. The employees that have served these fine businesses will no longer have jobs to return to. Federal unemployment assistance will not be available forever. And I talked about that in the context of the Post editorial, that when the president came along and said, "This is what I'm going to try to do, but it's going to cost you $100 per week per person," the governor was so quick. We can't afford that. What about the CARES Act money? That's already been earmarked. So she was really quick to put in her extra pay for people that came to work, you know, the 3-category sliding scale. She's really quick to do that and really quick to tell us nobody's going to get laid off. I'm not going to cut hours, etc. So the government of Guam goes on just as it always has. But now, you know, the paper had stories about the businesses that are closing now. And she kind of thumbs her nose at the federal unemployment assistance. Okay, so I've got our Fred on the line. I'm going to stop here with the Chamber of Commerce and find out what our Fred can tell us. What can you tell us, our Fred?
Bob, I think I have a solution for the what you're just talking about, the unemployment and how Gov Guam cannot match the $100 that is needed to make it $400 with the 345 a week. I think I have a solution.
Okay.
And as Gov Guam workers have not taken a pay cut, whereas private sector has, and since we're in this all together, like a team, and teammates help each other out, we're all on the same island, same team, one team, Team Guam, and I suggest, tell me first, how many Gov Guam workers are on Guam?
I think around 11,000 are, Fred.
Okay. How about each Gov Guam worker takes a pay cut of maybe $150 or $200 and give that to each private sector employee to cover the island's share of the $100. Now, if there's only 11,000 and we have 40,000 in the private sector who are suffering, if you do the math, they can figure out how much each Gov Guam worker can give up so that the private sector can even make something as for payroll. That would be one solution. And I'm not just bringing that solution up as a joke or just to stir something up. It's a valid solution, I'm thinking, that Gov Guam can afford. What's your thoughts?
Well, I kind of came up with the same idea when the governor said we can't afford that. And my response was, well, if you can't afford it, then do what was done before, cut government hours back and use the money that you're saving so that you can afford it. Same okay. Concept, our Fred.
Okay, so we're on the same. So that would be a great solution. We're Team Guam, one team, and 40,000 private, 11,000, that's 50,000 people. And we can all help each other out here.
You know, what's going to happen someday, it won't happen this election, but someday the 40,000 are going to say, I'm going to quit electing people that only care about the 11,000. No more. I'm only going to vote for people that are looking out for the private sector and not making every decision in favor of government employees. Mm-hmm. Because right now, conventional wisdom is, well, if you want to be reelected, you can't make the government of Guam employees mad because there's 11,000 of them and they vote in a block. So that's where
but look at it. The private sector employees are funding the government to pay their medical and health, dental, and their Gov Guam paychecks. It's all coming out of private workers' tax money.
That's
private business tax money. Now, if the private sector and employees are forking all that out for Gov Guam employees, what's the harm if Gov Guam employees help the private sector out a little bit? Nothing wrong. We're scratching your back every day for decades and decades. What's wrong if Gov Guam scratches the private sector's back? We are funding Gov Guam and their workers. Okay, so help a little back to the private sectors. We're just going to give you back more by working. It works hand in hand.
Seems right to me, Alfred.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks for calling, Alfred.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Of course, if that happened, if a brave senator were to introduce legislation to bring about freeing up enough money to do the unemployment, there would be a lot of angry people at the legislature, and for most senators, that would be too hard to bear. They don't run. Most people don't want to run for the legislature because they want to make people mad. They want people to think highly of them. So it's a matter of not exactly a matter of principle as it is so much about who would be angry and how will that anger be demonstrated if I take a particular action. Okay, we got another Joe back again, huh? Another Joe, you must like that Ferris wheel. This is your second ride.
Okay, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't taking from those who are more well off and giving to those who are not, isn't it? If it's not like a story of Robin Hood, then it's a story of would it be close to being socialism?
The dreaded S word. Well, you know, the word socialism is so often misused. I think it's time to define what socialism means. Socialism means governmental control of the factors of production and probably the factors of distribution. So when the government controls all production, it controls wages and a lot of other things like that. That's what socialism means. Now, when you have ex gratia, which means free, transfer payments to redistribute wealth, that is not socialism, although a lot of people say, well that's what they do in Sweden, and it works pretty well up there, but that's another story. But I see where you're coming from. It's a form of egalitarianism that on its face perhaps is somewhat repugnant. On the other hand, when the governor rejects out of hand any way to help one group of people on the island and goes out of her way to protect another group of people on the island, I suspect there are a lot of people out there who are saying you could call it a hippopotamus and I wouldn't care. It still should be done.
Mm-hmm. Well, it would just seem as though she needs to activate and mobilize the GovGuam employees to do more and possibly redefine their job titles.
Well,
certainly
with respect to with the director of Parks and Recreation, Roque Alcantara, you know, his job title needs to be refined. He's supposed to keep the parks open and functional, not close them for no reason at all. And unfortunately, I'm afraid he's not the only one that kind of has that mindset in the government of Guam.
Yeah, well, these people who are being paid to stay home, I know that's still the case. If that is the case, then they need to find ways to send them over to the mayor's offices and say, hey, you got something that you can do to keep these people busy in the villages? You know, they could even be sent to their own villages, their own village mayors if they like, and work within their villages. But nevertheless, they need to find ways to keep them busy, because I think that would go a long way in justifying them getting paid when people are not able to earn a paycheck. And for that matter, why are able-bodied individuals in the private sector not allowed to go and find ways to safely provide what we call what's the word for it? Legal, or when you're earning a living legally. I can't think of the word. find other ways in the private sector to provide a service, to keep busy and safe. You know, there's got to be intelligent minds out there that can figure out, after so many months of it, you know, it's been going on 6 months now. You know, there's got to be some intelligent minds out there say, hey, okay, so this is the equation here. We can do this. We can do this. We can't do this. You know, so we already established the parameters, and we already established maybe you know, the amount of contact, the percentage-wise frequency should be in contact of anyone, the amount of the density in the area, 25, 50% capacity, what have you. So these are parameters we're working with here. You know, why would they not allow the private sector to stay functioning? For that matter, if they've proven that someone has caught the coronavirus and they've recovered, wouldn't those people basically have a free pass or ticket?
One would think.
Other than spreading it.
Yeah. Well,
because they still be carriers, you think?
Right now, Joe, according to the official pronouncement, that those government employees who are at home are supposed to be working remotely. They're supposed to be doing their jobs online, etc. And that would be good if it's actually happening, if it's not just an interesting and convenient story to cover for people who are enjoying another paid vacation.
Well, what about the private sector, where if it can be proven that certain individuals of the household, possibly the entire household, or you know, more than 60-70% of the household had caught the virus, there are no elderly individuals in that household, and there's no one with a condition which would make them vulnerable. Basically, those, you know, set certain parameters. Okay, the best case scenario is everyone in that household has caught it and they recovered, and they keep to themselves. And then when they're out of their residence, they stay to a certain designated area. You know, why can't we have those types? You know, I think it was Dr. Shea said smarter testing. Once you've had smarter testing, designate certain individuals within a household or population that can go out and stay busy.
Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, I'll allow it. I don't know if the governor will, but I'm going to have to bid you adieu.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, Uncle Bob. Appreciate it.
And I use that word advisedly. I'm going to have to bid you adieu because I've got Frenchie on the line, who I'm going to pick up right after the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Okay, so here we are after the seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois, and we go from there straight to Frenchie, who's going to tell us, I guess, a little bit about the governor and Wuhan virus 19. Is that Wuhan virus? Is that right, Frenchie?
A little bit. Before I delve into that, I wanted to be kind of a devil's advocate, and you know how much I hate to be the devil's advocate.
Well,
but,
we don't allow the devil on tall tales under any circumstance.
The advocate in general for what's his name, Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
That seems to be extremely frustrated, and the frustration kind of clouds his view of the law. But I must say, you know, I'm trying to have a family member to come over and to follow all the rules of quarantine and everything. So I went on the Department of Health website, and it makes the process for importing a dog on Guam look simple. This is as Byzantine as it can get, and it doesn't address a lot of the issues that people are looking for. For example, if I want to voluntarily quarantine, are there any hotels that are being selected or things like this, like they do in Taiwan, where you have a list of different price hotels which have been recognized by the government, where you can quarantine and they serve you 3 meals a day, and they actually have nurses on staff and everything in case there is an issue, which doesn't seem far-fetched, because if you remember last week we saw a gentleman that had a heart attack while he was in quarantine and died from it. So, you know, not to defend the fact that Murphy ran away from quarantine, but let's say that you know, what we got from GovGuam is a typical commission product. Like, you know, if you ask a commission to design you a horse, you end up with a camel with 5 legs. And that's exactly what they have done. I mean, I'm really trying to find all the information for my family member. It is crazy, you know, and you have arrows going in every direction. There is no clear-cut things. They tell you straight on that it might change upon the whim of the governor. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that was my aparté on this issue. But yeah, I'm ready to go on and talk about the things you had on the card. So fire away.
Well, I just been talking about the governor and her approach to the shutting down of businesses here in favor of a virus threat that I don't think has been very well defined, and I don't think I'm the only person that has that same opinion. So do you want to talk about that, Frenchie?
Yeah, I wrote an article this weekend on the Jungle Watch, which is Tim Rohr's blog, regarding how the governor basically outtweeted the Chancery regarding our right to worship. And, you know, a couple of months back, we remember that the Liturgical Commission had gone to great extent to try to get the churches reopened, and they ran into Führer de Norcy, who decided that she was not going to let the church do their basic duties. And so here we go again for another turn. So apparently last Friday, you had a very nice lady calling into your show and asking about what was going to happen this weekend. And I noted, because at the time, the Liturgical Commission had recommended to the Archbishop of Agatna to keep the churches open with all the restrictions that they were doing regarding the safety of the parishioners and all the things that they had put in place, which frankly are a lot better than most stores I'm going to on the island. And, you know, a lot of parishes have gone through a lot of expenses trying to make sure that it was a safe environment. And then suddenly, out of the blue on Saturday, we get a communique from the Chancery saying we were going back to parking lot masses. And what happened is that the Chancellor, who is also the private counselor to the Archbishop, had gone through the back of the Liturgical Commission and called on his own the governor, who could not expect such a nice gift because she had not been as dictatorial in her approach regarding the church, and I think she was waiting to see how the Chancery was going. And basically, because of that phone call, then the Archbishop called from Michigan, and they had a conversation, and they agreed to go back to Mass in the parking lots. And there was a communique that said this was done in coordination with the Liturgical Commission. And if you heard Father Goffigan this morning on KUAM, he didn't seem to agree with that at all. And even though he was very diplomatic in order not to get people into trouble, there was a lot.
Frenchie, if I could interrupt you for a second, you said something about KUAM. Is that a misspelling of Guam?
Yeah, I guess it's a misspelling of Guam, yeah.
It's not. Is it a radio station?
Apparently, it's a radio and a TV station. Well, what do I know? I never watched it, but...
Well, you know, folks, all of the right-thinking folks on the island set their dial to 93.3.
Absolutely.
And they never touch it all day long. Yeah, so
that's why I'm here this afternoon.
So you might tell us what it was that Father Goffigan said, as opposed to relying on the almost impossible possibility that any of our international radio listening audience was listening to KUAM.
Yeah.
So what did he say?
Well, basically he was saying that, the Archbishop did that out of to make sure that for the safety of the people of the island, but basically they were running around the issue that basically the Chancery had capitulated to the governors, and the governor didn't have to do much to do so. And the article I wrote last night was called "Have We Been Betrayed Again?" Have the faithful of Guam been betrayed again? Because the faithful the Catholics of Guam have been betrayed by several bishops before, including, of course, Apuran. And this time it was more farther around. So we'll see what comes out of this. There is a lot of people. When I was in my parish yesterday trying to catch a mass, which had been canceled, a lot of people were quite upset. There was a lot of families coming with children trying to do their duties, and they were frustrated. And a lot of mamamkos who do not have the internet, who do not automatically watch the medias, were completely confused and disoriented. And, the duty of the church is to its flock, and they basically didn't do it. So Father Paul was kind of making apologies for the Chancery, but you can tell he was not very happy about that. And apparently he had been silenced before when he 2 months ago, when he was the one that blew the whistle on what was going on. And so I guess he was being a little more diplomatic this time, but the result is the same, and it's very sad. And so apparently the Chancery seems to say we hope that it will last 2 weeks only, but I think a lot of people are asking questions about that it's going to be another 2 months rather than 2 weeks.
Let me jump in here for a second. I read your post on Jungle Watch. In fact, it's on the card, although I may not deal with it because we're dealing with it now. But what I come away with, and this goes all the way back to the beginning, is that the Archdiocese's duty is to provide the sacraments to parishioners.
Exactly.
It's not to be really accommodating to the governor.
That's right.
And if there isn't a little bit of friction between the archdiocese and the governor, then that means the archdiocese isn't doing its job.
Its duties, yeah.
And from the very beginning, it seemed that the MO of the archdiocese was to, well, tell us what we can't do and we'll go along with it. And the worst instance of that was when Commissar DeNarcy wrote back to Father Paul and the Liturgical Commission saying that sacramental services will not be allowed. And I've harped about this so many times. The archdiocese, the archbishop should have come back and said, we will cooperate with you with respect to social distancing and masks and other things like that. But don't ever even think about telling us that we can't have sacramental services.
Exactly.
And that didn't happen, and it still hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And apparently we're still caving in. So the Wuhan, so the PCOR 3, may last 2 weeks or it may last a month. But, when you're talking about the church, actually you're talking about eternity there. And I just don't see the kind of dedication to eternity that I would expect from responsible religious figures. And you kind of zero in on Father Ron Richard. Is that the problem?
Well, he's the one that does all the traffic, the traffic at the chancery. For many reasons, he ended up being the chancellor and also the personal secretary to the archbishop, and he's a lifelong friend of the archbishop. He's here on loan from Detroit, and he has a certain attitude of what the independence movement people would call colonizer superiority complex. I think he takes a lot of the people here on Guam for a bunch of country bumpkin, which is an expression I use in the article. And that's very sad because there are a lot of very talented people. The Liturgical Commission has some very good people on there, and the parish priest had basically agreed to keep the churches open, but basically they were overruled by Father Ron, and the archbishop sided with his friend. Unfortunately, when the archbishop arrived on island, he didn't have many people he could trust, so he put Father Ron in charge. And Father Ron will tell you every time you see him that he wants to go back to Michigan, and maybe it's a good idea, because he doesn't understand the culture, and he certainly is more of a kumbaya Catholic than somebody. He's more worried about the administration of things than saving souls. And the big thing is that you need to save souls. And the communication director actually had made a communique without mentioning the Liturgical Commission, but Father Ron insisted to put a phrase in it which made it sound like the Liturgical Commission agreed with that decision, which they did not. And that's a main problem. So you have a divided clergy. You have people trying to do the right thing, and you have people impeaching them of doing so. And that's very sad. And, with all the upheaval that the Catholic community has suffered over the years due to bad clergy, like Apuran and some of the minions around him, I think a lot of people were expecting better. And I looked at it as some kind of a betrayal.
You also tagged Father Ron with his activities leading up to the 2018 election. Frenchie, you want to explain that?
Well, yeah. It basically, during the 2018 election, and it was the beginning of, if I might be corrected on this, but I think it was right at the time where the archdiocese had started their bankruptcy proceedings and so on. Some people are very active in the community to be for saving lives, especially anti-abortion. And so the pro-life movement was being quite vocal about not electing Lou Leon Guerrero because of her past as being the number one advocate for abortion on the island. And I think when Tim called a couple of times, he went into a lot of details about her responsibility in that fight. And many Catholics were quite upset about her coming to be governor, and were warning people to be careful, because if you're going to elect a pro-abortion person, you are going to get somebody that doesn't abide by the tenets of the Catholic religion. And since it is still a majority Catholic island, it raised a lot of questions. And Father Ron was the one that really pushed, would say, don't say anything, don't be active, and actually put a memo out there to say, we are going to lose our tax status if we are not being careful, and basically silence the people within the community that wanted to talk about it, even though this is something that's being done in many, many dioceses around the United States and the world. And I understand there is some legalities that you have to be careful about, but this was basically a silencing of the opposition from the pro-life movement.
Yeah, well, and of course, were the fears well-founded? In her first year as governor, the governor had to deal with a crisis because we'd gone 7 months without a reported abortion, and she sent Jane Flores out to find an abortionist.
That's correct. And then actually we still don't have an abortionist, but all that effort that was made into looking for one, we still do not have what you call help me on this for the legal doctors for death. I forgot the actual term. Coroner, yes,
Yeah.
Thank you very much, yeah. So we still don't have a coroner, but we spend a lot of time and effort and money looking for an abortionist instead of looking for a coroner, which the police department has said is really essential that we get it. And Lewin on the jet plane decided that, he cannot follow on some of those cases because he hasn't had a coroner to give him the result on some of those suspicious deaths. So, it's like you say, they're putting the horse in front of the carriage, and it's really sad. But this is all tied up, and when the people that have the moral authority refuse to take the lead, you end up with people like Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. For better and for worse, and so far it's worked for worse.
As far as tax status, churches don't even need to be 501c3s. The mere fact that their churches gives them a tax-exempt status. But using that, looking at that in that light, in terms of duties, let's say that the church has a duty not to engage in partisan politics, but the church also has a duty to say things like Catholics don't vote for public officials who are pro-abortion.
That's correct.
And I never heard that coming out in the 2018 election.
No, it was silence. It was silence. The same way they're trying to silence people that want to do the right thing to bring the sacraments to the faithful. And this is sad. And to me, it's a betrayal of the trust and the parishioners have given the Archbishop when he arrived, and it's very sad because a lot of people had great hopes.
Good enough, Frenchie. Frenchie, very enlightening as usual. I'm really glad you called, but I'm going to have to bid you adieu.
Yeah.
Because Jack is standing by in the drive-through over at McDonald's. I don't want to keep him from his supper.
Yeah, make sure he doesn't tell you don't know Jack.
I'll do it. Thanks, Frenchie. So long.
Bye-bye.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, so here we are again. And we go from, I just distracted here by something on the Facebook. So we travel from Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, very swiftly to the drive-through at McDonald's, whereupon we see Jack pulling in for his supper. Hello, Jack.
Hi, good evening, Bob. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, I'm not at a drive-through. I was at the drive-through this weekend, and I have to tell you that at all the drive-throughs that I've been, they're all asking you to wear mask while you're in your car. All of them.
To wear your mask?
I was kind of disappointed. I was pulling up to a Wendy's, and I was actually challenged by the cashier asking me if do I have a mask before I proceeded to the next window. And I asked myself, is this the hill I want to die on? And I said, no, I don't want to die on this hill right now. So I complied, and I put on my mask, and I proceeded to the next window to get my order. And it's sad to say that it's come down to this, that it's mandatory that you have to wear a mask now while you're going through the drive-thru. It's a sad day in America, Bob.
Well, if you talk in your sleep, you better wear a mask to bed, right?
I don't know. It's 1984.
It is.
But
indeed.
anyways, I just wanted to call, and I was looking over the numbers, and I think year to date we have 6 confirmed deaths.
6?
The Wuhan virus.
I thought it was 5, Jack.
It might have been 5, but I'm looking at it that the Google searched this morning, and it said 6.
Okay, all right.
And, at the same time, I decided to look at how many traffic fatalities or vehicle fatalities we had in Guam, and we have 8 since January. And so I'm wondering, at any point since we passed the Wuhan virus deaths by 2, did the governor ever said that, hey, we're going to maintain a proper safe distance between vehicles? That's 1 car length per 10 miles. All those finding violations will be fined $1,000 or even put in jail. Has she said anything about that? Since the amount of traffic fatalities by auto.
And if she did, she could trot out that old trope. If it saves just 1 life, it's worth it.
But she hasn't, has she?
No, she
hasn't
hasn't.
Even said, hey, only essential vehicles on the road. She hasn't said no traveling the roads past 10 o'clock. So here we are. We have more traffic fatalities here in Guam caused by autos, exceeding the amount of those that have died from Wuhan virus. And yet we see an imbalance here. It just, I don't know how, It's the bus that Joe Biden was riding in December. It's the malarkey bus.
There you go. Lots of malarkey.
It's a lot of malarkey, and I was reading the paper about how businesses are closing down. People are losing their jobs, and it's just frustrating right now, Bob, because it seems that it doesn't make any sense anymore. I just can't figure it out, put my finger on why and how this has come to pass and how extreme we've come, how our feelings are hurt, how even our right to practice our faith has become a danger to society. I just I can't make any heads or tails of it. But it seems that it is a bunch of malarkey, and we could trace it back to Joe Biden's bus in December. But anyways, Bob, I just wanted to know your take on this. I mean, here we are. The numbers don't lie, but yet we hold our society and our lives hostage on the predication that, hey, we're looking at overwhelming conditions that could overwhelm our hospitals in a mere instant. One plane crash and Lord forbid into a mountain overwhelmed our hospital. I mean, we can deal with emergencies and catastrophic events, but when we're creating this thing on our own accord and it's taking its toll, I mean, I have no idea. I don't understand right now the logic of what's going on. But I hope that you can make sense of it, because it's past my patience. It's past my understanding. I don't even dwell on it anymore. But every time I open the paper and I read some sort of caption or read some sort of headline and how skewed the numbers are, I just want to chuck it up and say, I wish these millennials good luck, but I don't know where we went wrong. I have no clue where we went wrong on.
Jack, there's an old saying, figures don't lie, but liars figure.
Can I tell you a lawyer joke while I have you online?
I like lawyer jokes. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this lawyer passed away of a heart attack and went to heaven, right? Have you heard of this?
This sounds like a tall tale indeed. A lawyer died and went to heaven?
Yeah, went to heaven.
It's hard to believe already, Jack, but go on.
Sure that's a lawyer joke?
Was greeted by all the bigwigs up there. Jesus himself, St. Peter, St. Therese, all the bigwigs greeted him. And St. Peter came up to him and said, congratulations for being the oldest human to ever have lived. And the poor lawyer looked at him confused and said, but St. Peter, I'm only 49. And then St. Peter looked back at him a little bit bewildered and perplexed, and he says, what? Well, according to your billing hours, you're 148.
Yeah, that's a good one, Jack. But I always, whenever I hear something like that, I always kind of come back and defend lawyers. It's just 99% of the lawyers that give the other 1% a bad name.
Oh, Bob. I think, I wish you a good evening, but it doesn't really make sense. But my math might be wrong. There might have been 5 Wuhan virus deaths here in Guam instead of 6, but the way I saw it was 6. And there are since July 8 people that were involved with auto fatalities, either pedestrian or in the car. So.
Good point, Jack. Good talking to you again. See you tomorrow, okay?
All right.
That's it for another day here on Tall Tales. Have no fear, we'll be back tomorrow. See you then.
point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The convention kicks off. I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. The Democratic Party kicking off its virtual convention on Monday, hoping for party unity.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders says even with Joe Biden as the presumptive party nominee, the progressive movement has made inroads. On ABC's This Week, Sanders said he will highlight that point at the convention and will continue to push Medicare for all, saying the norm in America should be
to guarantee health care to all, not make huge profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. That fight continues the day after Joe Biden is elected president.
Biden's VP pick, Senator Kamala Harris, endorsed Medicare for all during the primaries. Sanders is set to give the keynote address Monday night. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Gun violence Sunday in Texas. 5 people shot and wounded at a flea market in San Antonio.